Engineering, 15th of February. Do we have any apologies?
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. No apologies. Any declarations of interest? Okay. Declarations of interest. Visitors. I'd like to welcome Robin.
Good morning, everyone.
Any no other visitors? Okay, we'll move on to 5.1, the minutes of the Engineering Services Committee meeting on the 16th of November 2021.
You're a wee bit hard to hear, sorry.
Sorry?
I'm finding you hard to hear for some reason. Is anyone else experiencing the same?
Yeah, that's quite hard to hear.
Speak a bit louder, is that better?
Yeah, that's better, Stuart, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
We don't have a microphone down here. The microphone's up there, so we need to speak up.
Okay, we're doing 5.1 minutes of the engineering meeting on the 16th of November 2021. Someone like to move their true and quick record.
How we move that?
Thank you, Graham. Seconded by Matt. All in favour? Thank you. Any matters arising? Okay, no matters arising. We shall move on to 5.2, which is the Community Facilities Service Operations Report. Brian, would you care to talk to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just before I start, if we could just take the opportunity to brief introduction to Robin Hyde, who's our new Alps to Oceans Trails Manager, who's joining us this morning. Would obviously have got her to come in and had a bit more of a meeting, but just thought we'd take this opportunity to introduce her online and just give her a few moments to introduce herself and what she sort of her plans are. And so yeah, if I could just hand over to Robin. And she'll just give you a few words for a few moments. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you in form across the computer screen. Yeah, my name's Robin Hyde. I've just joined Waitaki District Council as the new Alps to Ocean Trail Manager. I've spent the last 4 years working for ACOM New Zealand. My background is in transport planning and business case development. Also in my earlier days, I was a travel agent. So sort of trying to bring to this role, I guess, combination of my passion for cycling, some of the cycle tourism and tourism background that I've had, as well as my more recent strategic planning and transport planning work. So yeah, really looking forward to being in the district and familiarising myself with the trail in particular over the next little while, getting out, meeting everybody. Really important to start to build those relationships. That's one of my first things on my to-do list. And yeah, looking to build the asset for both districts. So yeah, it's exciting. If anyone's got any questions for me, please fire ahead.
No, Robin, it's great you're on board, and we certainly want to develop our trail off-road. And I noticed further in the report that you've identified safety, which we have quite some time. The Alps to Trail has gone on for quite some time, to be fair. Waitaki's been busy developing their part down there. We've identified the part that we need to get done. There was some land tenures, but we need to crack on and really get that done. So great.
Yeah,
I trust you've written it all.
I've written sections of it. I haven't written it all yet, but yeah, that's certainly on my agenda for the next little while to get out and do the rest of it. So yeah, for sure. And keen to do it end to end as well. So I really got that up-to-date insight.
Okay, it would be great to meet you in person.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to meet you in person over the coming weeks/months, who knows.
So just to add a bit more, Robin's is based working primarily out of the Waitaki District Council office, but part of the arrangement was she would spend some time in the Mackenzie offices, either in Twizel or Fairley, but we obviously haven't sort of pushed on with that with the current sort of COVID red situation. So we'll still just sort that out. I think the other thing Robin didn't mention probably, which she's a fairly passionate and enthusiastic cycle tourist, and even though she hasn't done the Alps to Ocean. She's quite an impressive resume of the trail riding she has done. So she's, yeah, part of, I guess part of her appointment was that enthusiasm for cycling on the trails around New Zealand, and can bring that experience, I guess, as a user to this role. So yeah, we're looking forward to having Robin helping us out. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Robin.
Brian.
But moving on to my report, let's take it as read. A few things are worth noting. Well, while we're on it, probably key things: the pool heating contract has sort of been, we've identified a preferred contractor. I've got a meeting tomorrow afternoon with them because they provided a couple of options which are a bit actually over specification, but still within budget. So we need to have a talk with them just to finalise what we actually do. And to get that contract underway, but we're still looking at probably a June delivery. I understand Alpine Energy sounds like they're now making some moves to do the power infrastructure upgrade, and Twizel that's also required. Peace trees, we're hoping to get procurement going on that shortly. We've got the sort of documentation ready from our project managers. It's for me to review, and hopefully get that work going in the sort of autumn winter period. Mentioned the Alps to Ocean we've got on here. Got some challenges with this upper section, the Jolly's car park up to the helicopter landing. And it's a very difficult section which wasn't really well developed originally. Just used a 4-wheel drive track, which I've since then taken it off that because that was problematic. The new trail, the kind of route really is pretty rough. So we're looking to do a certain amount of work, but the problem with that area is there's worry that it can all get flooded out. So any trail development that's done would just get wiped out. And funnily enough, got reminded of that. It was last week when we had that heavy rain. We actually had heard that the trail was very badly damaged and unrideable. Turned out it wasn't too bad. So a little bit of work to fix up a few things there. But that's a challenging section which we'd ideally need to invest a bit more in, with things that we think we can do to make it better, but we get a lot of complaints about it, and it's really not up to the sort of standard we'd expect for Alps to Ocean or Great Rides of the trail. Twizel Event Centre, David may wish to speak to that item. He knows a bit more about this project than I do.
Yeah, Brian, just a question back on Alps to Ocean. Murray has got a question.
Yeah, just a question on that, Brian. If that section is going to be a problem, can it be moved? Like, can the start or can the start of the trail or the section be moved somewhere? Because it's going to be washed out all the time.
Not ideally. The other option that discussed was getting the helicopters to fly the clients further down. But there's been pushback about that. Obviously, that would increase the cost because they'll fly for longer. It is, because I rode in January on a beautiful day, and it is an amazing section to ride. It's absolutely beautiful up there. So I think there's just stuff we can do relatively cheaply, but it's without going overboard. But yeah, probably will need sort of constant bit of work, I guess, to attend to some areas. But if what we do is you're not complete sort of trail development, but still make it a comfortable, sort of enjoyable ride without investing a lot. I think there are some solutions.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just asked Brian, is this still below the original start of the track? Because a couple of years ago, I got badly washed out by the river, and it was agreed that we would start the track further down rather than put a lot of money into maintaining a track that's continually being eroded by the river.
Yes, as I understand it, that related to they did move the landing spot for the helicopter further down. So I think that would be addressing what you're talking about, but there's still this quite long section, which on the whole is probably mostly good. It might go for years without being too problematic. So then you might get one big flood. So that's sort of, it's a balance between how much we invest in it and to keep it rideable, but then be prepared to have to go back in and tidy up some bits and pieces.
So Brian, you really feel it's worthwhile maintaining that bit of track that they were going to probably cut off the track because of high cost of maintaining, given its views and location.
Yes, as I say, I think they moved the helicopter landing further down where there was a river or bad erosion to avoid that really problematic area. But the rest of it is still quite a long section down there, which would take a much longer helicopter flight and miss quite a bit of the riding experience. So it's one of those areas that I think I haven't had much experience with it. So I think the people that have been, we'll talk to the contractor have had a lot more experience up in that area to sort of know what happens. I guess we can just continue to monitor it over the coming years to see what keeps happening with flooding and things.
One other question, I understood that there wasn't many helicopter rides actually taking place. So having a helicopter launching area probably, excuse me, not that much use.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite either hear or.
Most people seem to want to drive up to Braemar, Mount Cook Station and start the trial. They're actually not using the helicopters to any great extent.
It's probably not. There's obviously a mixture, but no, I'm sort of hearing there is a lot that like this idea of going right from Mount Cook, from the full Alps, and using the helicopter service. It's still quite popular. There's probably is now hearing more starting from actually Techapol and riding that section. So there's quite a mix. And then some will just ride up to the top of Hammond's Road and start from there. Don't know the exact numbers, but all those options seem to be for different people. Yeah.
I think the trials, the Alp Station trials got some figures on this. So Robin will be able to help on that.
Yeah. So once you get to know what's going on better, can report further on those options.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to check in on some of those options and check in with you, Brian, on that. Come get me fully up to speed. but I think it is good to also identify the diverse number of cyclists that we do have out on the trail. And while some of them don't use the helicopter option, there is still plenty that do.
Good morning, Brian, and welcome, Robin. Anne Munro here. I think it's important to note that regardless, right now the current ATO budget is insufficient to undertake anything more than the basic maintenance. So it's really important that you reconcile that factor into it when thinking about how we progress forward on this.
Yes, there's concern. It's taken me a little while to figure out what the Alp Station budgets were that council was budgeting, because they were sitting in the tourism budget, a little bit hidden from me. And I had thought there was more maintenance money available, but the maintenance money is really quite limited. So it's a wee bit of something I was really wanting to flag, that's a problem to do much in that area with minimal sort of funding. It's a problem.
Okay, any further questions? Just one thought on that, Brian. It might maybe talk to some of the locals up there that have very used to the inclement weather that they can get. You can get a lot of rainfall a day up around Braemar. So I would suggest talking to Braemar and the ones at Mount Cook.
Yeah, certainly our previous trail manager or interim trail manager, Anne, was in contact with the station owners, and our maintenance contractors had a lot of experience in that area, and also Doc as well. So you're having those conversations to try and understand what best to do. And I think that's partly what led them originally to not doing a lot of track development up there, was that worry about the flooding. But yeah, I think there's a balance. There's a little bit more we could do without sort of overdoing it.
Okay. Carry on.
David, did you want to talk about the event centre briefly?
I was going to share some photos just to update the committee on the progress made, but I'm sorry, I've had to move into another room to get decent internet connection, so I aren't able to do that. But progress has been made pretty well. We've got the we've finally got the mechanical equipment all checked out, and the remediation work sitting with Becca deciding exactly what we need to do, whether it's a matter of upgrading what we've got or replacement. So we are waiting for that report. We're pretty much through all the fire things, push bars and emergency entrances. We've got the two main doors, the one into the main building and one into the community area. They're ordered, so they're on their way. And we're just doing a little bit of work around the fire escapes through the gymnasium, how we can manage that while keeping security to the gym. So I'm pretty pleased with where our progress has been made within the budget that we've got. So yeah, happy to answer any questions.
No questions?
So, yeah, just one, David, the seating in the auditorium, how's that work progressing?
Yeah, it's been progressed very well. That was some of the photos I was going to show. We've divided up underneath the seating into four fire cells, and three of them have all been lined out. The only one that we've got to finish now is the one with the big electrical switchboards, and we're just going through the final details of how we isolate the huge array of cables coming into it. So we've got that designed. So yeah, no, all very good. We are also going to do a little bit of work on the roof. We have quite a significant leak in one of the gullies, and it was never built correctly. So we're getting the contractor to do that. I just need to get permission from Alpine to build scaffolding up over their transformer. So now that's all progressing pretty well, Graham. The contractors worked right through Christmas to get that all done.
So that's great. And the other thing was ventilation within the auditorium. How are you getting around that problem?
Yeah, and that's the one that we've had the ventilation people in there. They've done all the airflows and the tests, and all those results have gone back to Becca, and that was the work that they're doing at the moment, telling me whether I can refurbish what we've got or whether we need to replace it. I'm expecting that report any day, and then we will let that work to be finished, get it done. My understanding, there's two issues involved. One, we've never done any maintenance on it, and two, we've had two various variations at some stage, which I would say we've done very much like a New Zealand number 8 wire. And so there's been some strange modifications, should we say. Look, I think some in 205, not that long after the building was built, and another lot, I think around about 2015. So we're just trying to unravel why they did it and what they did. So that's sitting with the electrical people as well.
James?
David, can I make a suggestion that you involve Rick Ramsey in those discussions? He was on the committee that was involved in the building and any further alterations to it, so he would have a history there.
Sorry, that was really hard to pick up, but we are talking to the original contractors who did the work, so we will get all the information of what they did and what they were trying to achieve through that. Unfortunately, it was work that should have been done under a building consent and wasn't, and so there are some issues around our code of compliance as well.
I'll send you an email.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Just before we leave that, also David, our previous building inspector, I kind of played golf with him on Sunday, and he's full of knowledge of what was supposed to be done with that building and wasn't done, and council signed off when they shouldn't, etc., etc. So he does have a lot of knowledge.
And we've certainly gone back to first principles, Graham, so that we actually get it signed off. The people that are doing it are absolutely independent. So I believe that when we come through this process, we will be properly certified and appropriate building warrant of fitnesses and certificates of public use will be absolutely above board and correct.
That's good.
Okay. Brian?
While
Mr. Chairman.
we've still got David, can I ask him a question that comes from the previous minutes? I thought I'd bring it up here, the community facilities. It's just an update. David, it's just an update on a workshop that was planned in the new year in regards to the Twizel Youth Centre. Has that been held?
No, it hasn't yet. We need to have a chat to the community board about it. It's I'm just, I suppose, concentrating on getting the Twizel Event Centre up and running, and then I'm going to move the team on to getting the Fairley building up and running, and then we were going to start looking down our others. We have got a couple of other issues around some of our swimming pools and things, so we're going through and getting the stock that we are using at this point in time, making sure that they're fit for purpose, and then we will move into that one. I suppose I have put it slightly on the back boiler because it's not been used at this point in time. We do need to have a conversation with the community board about that, and Angela's had a few discussions around the library, so there's a sort of a combined community discussion that needs to be had on that project.
Thank you. I think it would be really good for the community board to be updated. Thank you.
Yep. And just also to say, I think we need to get a whole, we need to get a wider conversation going across all the centres, be it Techapol, Twizel, and Fairley, to understand what the community led projects are, and get a sense of them, so we can then start to prioritise them and start to factor them into our workload down the line. So that's something that I've provided for as part of the annual plan, to bring someone in to do that work.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, move on. TIF projects.
Yes, sure, Mr. Chairman. Good progress being made with the toilets. The contract's just recently sort of signed, and we're working on kind of background preparation and bits and pieces, just tweaking the final location of the Fairley toilet around a little bit. One that is proving challenging is a location for the Fairley camper effluent dump station. We were looking at a site adjacent to the golf club car park, but that's probably after some initial feedback and conditional agreement from the golf club and community kind of pushback a bit. Probably moved on from that back to the drawing board a little bit to look at some other site options, but it is quite difficult to find somewhere that has a range of, meets the range of criteria, including sewer connection, good sort of access, not too residential, and so on. So back to the drawing board on that one, but we'll keep trying to push ahead and come up with a couple of new options for the community board and others to consider. Any questions on the toilets? There's obviously the designs we've included as an attachment, which you can have a look at. We were quite pleased, I guess, as a tender to the review and acceptance committee on the designs they came up with. They were quite sort of innovative and a bit different, as well as just fitting basically the modular XLU units inside, which are kind of the standard ones, which you'll be familiar with in Techapol. So yes.
Yeah, no, they look really, really good, and the community board here is quite really chuffed with that design, which is good. But however, I do look at it and think that gale force winds and some of the looks of these buildings, it looks as though almost a wind could tear a wing off, a roof off. Well, I dare say they've been engineered for the strongest of winds and the heaviest of snows.
Yeah, hopefully they'll hold together, but I guess the design, the wind might go underneath those. I'm not sure if they're solid underneath or not. So yeah, not solid wings.
The design will have to meet building code criteria, so we're waiting for the design to come through. I don't believe it's been through the building control, so it'll be designed appropriately. But you also got to recognise there's a gap underneath it, which actually means that the pressure above and below is the same.
Right, we'll move on. We've got a number of capital development projects kind of finally underway.
Just a
Sorry.
question, Brian, just remind me what is happening to the Bukaki, Lake Bukaki amenities? They're looking pretty similar to what they are now, so I'm just needing to be
Yes, so-
reminded as to what's happening there.
Yeah, so if you have a look at the plan on page 17, what they're actually doing is keeping the existing toilet block, and we're looking at some renovations in there, but not too much needs doing, mainly around there was a disabled accessible unit, which sitting in the men's toilet, which we're going to sort of roof that in so it's properly unisex. But they're adding a whole new building basically to the right of the pathway as you walk up to the toilets. There's a bit of a little hillock there in between that and the salmon shop and the visitor centre, and with a similar sort of roof design style, so it should fit in really nicely. Came up with a good solution there, and so that's sort of adding significantly to our capacity, which has been one of the major kind of issues I guess we had with the Bukaki when our tourism's fully back going again with all the buses.
Okay, Matt?
Brian, so I didn't read the small print, but are they high-tech self-cleaning style toilets, or are they manual type? And what's the finish inside? Are they going to be tiled or what?
They're just manual cleaning, so the automation is toned down quite a bit from, say, the toilets in Techapol to a more manualised system. Pretty sure the tiled finish is standard with Exelus. So yeah, very nice high quality, but not too high tech. I'm not a fan of the self-cleaning toilets. They tend to leave the toilets quite wet all the time, which leads to other problems. And also the hinge doors being affected by wind. But again, I think they're just a manual opening door rather than an electronic one. I could be wrong about that though. Yeah.
Thank you.
The details of the finish are on the plans. You'll see that in those little notes, there's talks about the roof structure, but we have gone to a very, very high level of cleanliness or ability to clean through there. Also, just because of COVID and all the rest of it, all the fittings are non-touch fittings so that people can just wave their hand on them, and as opposed to having to turn on taps and things like that. We are just talking about what we need to do to retrofit those ones at Pukaki, whether we want to retrofit some of those kind of fittings into the old toilet block, and we're working our way through that at the moment.
So, all right, so you, Mr. Chair, discussions with Meridian. There's no issues with us spending a lot of money there as such. There was a talk there at one stage a couple of years ago that by 2025, they didn't want any buildings on that spillway. There was risk to them as such. So I presume that these discussions have gone in tandem with Meridian.
Yes, we've been consulting with Meridian all the way through. That sort of just the last kind of sign off from them of sort of location, but they're well aware of our plans and what we're doing, and they've been fine with that, been supportive. Yeah, so haven't mentioned any issues about not wanting any more buildings there.
Okay.
Oh, and just making you aware, Brian, you probably have had it pointed out before, but I think it's important that I say while I remember the hand basin benches in the ladies is not good enough. It's level and it creates a whole heap of water on the floor. And so it can't stay the way it is. It needs to have an angle approach to it or something to keep the water from dripping onto the floor.
Okay, thanks for that. No, I wasn't aware of, hadn't heard that one before, so we'll have a look at that.
Check it out. You'll see what I mean when you have a look.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No further questions. Okay, Brian. Very well.
So let's get back to where I was. As I say, we've got a few number of projects we're finally getting underway. The Auditorium Reserve and Techapol works underway with that, with Whitestone Contracting doing that project. We hope to have that sort of wrapped up April probably, planting. O'Hare Road Reserve Twizel, we're just starting on that project, which is really just to follow on from putting in the shared path and the subdivision in that area. It was an opportune time to do some development of that sort of quite big reserve area alongside the road, and then there's a finger that goes into the back, predominantly just tree planting, with some planting on the bunding that we put around the paths as well. Techapol Lakefront, off of Miskell, project managers for that, and they're just finalising their contract documentation, so that'll go to the market shortly to get that underway and be done by sort of May, June 2022. Bulk of that is really just a linking concrete path from where we've got existing pathway around Lakeside Drive and right round, and a bit of rerouting, closing off the sort of the gravel road, runs around the front of the lake at the moment, using some of that, but also rerouting the path a bit closer to the lake, further down towards the river, and tidying up some of the sort of the stockpile of metal that's been sort of dumped down there. So tidy all that area up and create a nice sealed pathway. A couple of other little jobs going on in Techapol with some bike racks and little landscaping of the island by the tavern that's been rebuilt. Fairly some cycle stands just top of the supermarket. Finally got a sort of sign off from the community board about those. Dog park we've been talking about for quite a while, but yeah, sort of just finalising whether they want to run with that location or not, and do a bit of work in the cemetery, re-landscaping the RSA sort of circle in the centre of the cemetery as well. And then a final one, our probably main item for this agenda is the Parks Community Facilities Strategy, where we went out to the community with a draft just prior to Christmas. We got some feedback, not a huge amount. Most of it was reasonably or pretty supportive, with some sort of minor tweaks and suggestions. So I've got, before we move on to that, is there any questions on those little capital projects?
James?
Brian, James, is it too soon to be asking about the Ruatanipa foreshore development?
Yes and no. We've just started a reserve management plan. Did I not have that on the agenda? Just done some initial stakeholder consultation prior to preparing and we'll be advertising formally for comments as part of the process, or just notifying that we're intending to start a management plan, which is just a legal step, and then work towards preparing a draft plan and development plan for consideration first by community board, and then we'll come back to the services committee with that draft plan, final approval, that then goes out to consultation. So still at early stages, but the feedback from our stakeholder engagement in Twizel was really positive. We were also raised the idea of putting some sports fields down there, which has been talked, as you know, there's no real sports fields in Twizel. So we need to identify a site, and I think there's a space there, and that was reasonably well supported. Thought it might get some pushback with people saying, oh, it's too far out of town, but I think people must understand that that's not really that far, and I think ties in quite well with the rowing sort of centre being the kind of sports hub really for Twizel. And that ties back a little bit to the kind of discussion around the youth centre sort of site as well, and what they might do with that, if we can sort of have a firm plan for sort of a future sports fields in Twizel down there.
Thank you, that's good to hear.
Emily?
Yep. Hi Brian, just through you, Chair, just the capital development projects. Brian, I see that we've discussed cycle stands in both Lake Taupo and Fairley, but the cycle stands that was selected as an option was selected by the Twizel Community Board hasn't been brought up. Is that just pushed out because of other developments happening in Twizel, or is that still on the?
Yes, and I notice I've got on my list of things to do is they're wanting some more bike stands in the Twizel marketplace. We just need to have a look at locations for those, although there is one we'll be putting in as part of the ramp sort of and steps redevelopment at the front of the Twizel service centre. So that'll be one of the ones that was selected by the community board. But yeah, I know there was some talk about some more in the square. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yeah, we've just got two bike stands that are sort of older portable ones that have caused a bit of have been subject to a bit of damage over the Christmas period, and bikes can no longer be used in it, or they not well anyway. So I think the community were under the impression that they would be replaced by some new ones, but it might just pay to maybe go back to the community board on that one, just so that we can get an update on that.
Yes, definitely. As I say, I noticed it on my list yesterday. As a matter of fact, that need to get onto that one. So we'll do that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any further?
Yeah. Referring to O'Howe Road Reserve, Brian, plantings of material. I understand that access to plant material is becoming quite a challenge. I'm just hoping that you make sure that there's going to be availability of plants when you require them.
Yeah, that's true. Nursery stock has been difficult, but we seem to have been managing to find what we need for other projects by shopping around. The sort of scale of planting isn't huge by some standards. But you're correct, it can be challenging. So sometimes we just need to wait for a while, and then we go back and fill in any gaps where we can't get the plants we want, or we find some alternatives. Yeah.
And my other point is the dog park. I see it was also brought up in the district parks and trails strategy. The dog park location has been going round and round in circles for as long as I've been on council. It would be really good if we could land the location of this dog park.
Yes. There was some interest from commercial and property about the site that we've proposed, that it may be more preferential for that to be earmarked for commercial purposes rather than used as a dog park. So we're still kind of, community board instructed us to kind of have a discussion, further discussions about that, and try and determine if that's the best option or not.
Just on that, we'll work that through with staff and get it so that it's ready to go back to the community board to their next community board meeting.
But as my understanding, the dog park, I don't think you'd want that as commercial. There's already one commercial enterprise be washed out there big time with floods, and it's also Waka Katahu. We were looking at putting a extension on the bridge for getting pedestrians over there. So it's probably falls back, and I don't know Scott's department or David's to see how we're getting on with Waka.
We did point that out at the community board, Stuart. So we just need to resolve it internally with property and commercial.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the conversation on community board was that whether that is commercial, whether that's viable commercial land or not, it's going to be a long time before it's developed. So there's not a great cost in putting the dog park in there. And if it's there for 10 years and then it has to be moved, well, then it's a viable option. So I think the longer it goes on, it doesn't need to go around in circles. The community board's already happy with it to be there on a temporary basis.
Can we make a decision then? Why can't we make a decision then?
I don't know.
I don't think you can make a decision because it's delegated to the community board rather than you, and then it gets you find in Kapiti District Council had a real classic example where a committee, when they've delegated things to a community board and they make a decision opposite to what the community board decisions, it becomes our board. So I think the best way is to actually just get the community board to confirm it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the community board has tried to confirm it,
Yeah.
but has been unable to.
I think your views will still be useful, taking them forward in our consideration and making it happen though. Thank you.
Parks and community facilities. Fairly meaty document. I would say, Brian, that the most important part to me is 4.5.7, and the strategy doesn't seem to address the financial implications of funding going forward, and we need to follow up with a paper to address the strategy, plus the having everything in order. So otherwise, this is going to get talked around and around and around. That many projects there. We need a decent strategy for it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's often a challenging thing when doing strategies like this, where we identify a lot of projects, then the question of funding comes up, is how you deal with that. The way I've dealt with it before was we sort of put together a supplementary kind of implementation plan. We've sort of got some a high level attempt at an implementation plan in here, which really just prioritises projects. And then it's in how we move forward and progress some of those, which I guess it still provides us the framework to what projects we'll push forward through annual plan and LTB processes. But we can look to develop some more detailed costing, certainly in the next 3 to 5 years, about how the cost to implement some of these. Many of the capital development projects, certainly in Techapol and Twizel, can be funded through the subdivision contribution funds that we have available. Other sort of issues are more operational, which require sort of staff resourcing and other things, which obviously then have other implementations which need to be addressed through your annual plan and LTP processes. I think it is difficult in a strategy, otherwise you'll get sort of bogged down and trying to lock ourselves into expenditures in a strategy, whereas it's just intended to be a high level guiding document that prioritises the work, and then we try and progress that as best we can.
Questions?
Oh,
And
Brian, just a comment around on page 27 in regards to what we heard and the key themes under environment. There was comment about the region's flora and fauna can be experienced without significant travel and commercial expenses. I thought that was sort of an idea that could be moved on to DOC to consider. And the other one around priority needs to be given to weed and pest control. That also too could be forwarded on to the likes of Environment Canterbury to be aware of that was raised when we went out to consultation.
A lot of it was on our land though.
Yep, certainly. I sort of reading between the lines of that submission, I think a number of sites were areas we're not really currently aware of, that some of them are even reserved or that we're doing much work on. So I guess my priority for the moment is just to focus on the areas we're currently managing and do those better, rather than to look to sort of find additional work, which will be challenging. But noting that there are a lot of opportunities and space for improvement, and we are working with DOC and ECAN, and I guess one of the strategy actions in here is around better liaison with particularly ECAN and DOC, and how we sort of facilitate the various things that we're doing, and then can feedback or communicate to them issues and concerns that have been raised to us through these sort of processes. But it's really that communication, which there isn't really a lot of, hasn't been a lot of communication going on sort of in a formal way with ECAN and DOC, a lot of informal sort of just by project or issue by issue stuff. But there's a need, or perhaps an advantage, from a more formalised sort of relationship and communication with those agencies. So we've identified that as an action.
Thank you, Brian. I support those comments.
any further comments?
So really what we're looking for is probably the key stuff is on page 28 onwards, where there's been some, we'll try to summarize the key themes and then our response and action. And we're really looking for the committee to endorse those. It's luckily there's not too much, but it is quite, so we hopefully got general agreement with what we're proposing to change or else not change the response. Hopefully, ideally, we believe we've been responsive to that feedback where we think it's sort of, particularly I guess where we believe it's really valid and actionable. And we've changed a few things. There's a couple of things around the Twizel marketplace where we've changed some priorities. Twizel around our play to maybe support a little bit more what's going on. Probably the marketplace playground we had as medium, probably a key one, moving that up a bit. There's a minor tweak for the marketplace toilets, although we're saying no change in strategy. We're not quite sure about really the level of need to expand the Twizel marketplace toilets. Some people are saying, yeah, they're very overcrowded when we've got a full tourism back, but until that happens, we can, I guess, see that happening. Will spur us on to moving that forward, but we've probably already got enough on our books to do in the next few years anyway.
Okay, Brian, well, talking around the table here, all the councillors endorse it, including the mayor.
I was just going to ask one thing about the tractor and the Twizel playground. From the point of view that I just see so many children getting enjoyment from that tractor, I think it's a pretty focal point on the playground.
I think I'd prefer to reserve my judgment on that one at the moment. We'll deal with that when we sort of decide we need to deal with it with the probably start with the community board. But we believe it could be it doesn't really comply with our the safety standards. But I know my grandchildren love it as well. But we believe we could replace it with something that would offer a lot more play value overall. But yeah, try and avoid getting into that discussion here if we can. Would be good.
Committee as a whole, quite happy with that, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Just for you, Stuart, that'll come back to the council with the alterations for full endorsement of that strategy with these changes integrated into it. Not sure, Brian, whether you've got a timetable for that?
I did, and that's probably what I was referring to is a couple of council options. We'll do that in the next couple of council meetings, whether we can get that done in the next one, but I think it was probably the one after. Can't remember the date now, but we want to kind of get this signed off and operational as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. So no more questions on 5.2. I'd like, would someone like to move the adoption of that report? Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Arlene, should we have a specific clause just saying that they endorse the approach the council staff are intending for the response to the strategy, or do we not need that?
Did I put a draft one in there?
No.
If you
So it'll go to council. Goes to council.
Goes to
after
actually
here.
council, the next council meeting or the one after.
And we'll adopt it at council. That's right, Arlene?
yes, that's correct, Mayor Graham, but I'll note in the minutes to your comments so that that's on the record.
Yeah, that we've endorsed it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 5.3. Lake Techapol Willow Bay Trail. Would someone like to move the adoption? Thank you, Anne. Second, Mayor. The author, Brian, again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably not too much. Hopefully, it's self-explanatory. This is really just formalising an agreement to use this area of council land or unformed legal road, which the community board was supportive of as well. So, if you've got any other questions?
Any other questions? Councillors? Yes, Murray?
Just the one, I presume it's above the water line.
The current water line.
Current water line, because it's very high and there are a few trails around there that are underwater at the moment.
That's a good point.
I understand from Techapol Trails that it was actually above the area of interest for Genesis, even though they obviously talked to them and sort of will still get their approval, but it wasn't technically required. So it must mean it's actually well above that water line that they would, the area that they would normally control, that they control.
Yep, that's fine. It'll be above their operating easement. Yep.
Okay,
So I'll just make a comment, Brian, that funding will be from volunteers who will maintain and keep the track free from rubbish.
That's correct. Or pretty much up to date, up to this time, Techapol Trails have already been responsible for all their trails sort of development and maintenance without any council input, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've done a great job. I think there's to be commended.
I'm getting some information from that direction.
I'll second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. 5.4, waste minimisation and management update. Someone like to move the adoption of this report? Graham and Matt, thank you. Angie.
Right, thank you. I'll take the report as read. I guess the highlight really is green bins. As you all know, it's been a long process, but they're finally getting closer. The bins are being made at the moment up in the North Island, and then they'll be transported down in the next few weeks and then rolled out to residents beginning of March. And we're looking to start the service on the 21st of March. So it's a couple of weeks later than we originally anticipated, but as COVID has done, it's just slowed down a lot of things. So 2 weeks probably isn't too bad in the great scheme of things. We'll have some communications going out before the service starts, so people know what to expect, when their bins are going to arrive, what to put in them, when they can start putting them out. Yeah, so it's all ticking along quite well, and hopefully we'll see them out on the streets very soon.
Good. And the new contract's running well?
Yep, new contract's running well. We had a governance meeting between the 3 South Canterbury councils yesterday, which is sort of our regular catch-up between the councils and the contractor. So the contractor seems to be performing well through all 3 districts, which is great, and continuing to perform well in Mackenzie. Services over Christmas, which always, can be unexpected depending on how many people are around. That all ran really smoothly. The extra collections were well received as usual in Techapol and Twizel, and we had some extra opening hours, sort of juggling around when the recovery parks would have been closed around public holidays, and they were also well received.
Okay, any questions for Angie? It's Anne.
Hi, Angela. Just a question in regards to the percentage of waste diverted from landfill. I just noticed when reading your report this time that between June 18 and September 19, according to the graph that's presented in the papers, there was a significant percentage of waste diverted. What was so significant about that period? Can you remember?
Well, that's a good question. I'm just having a look at it. Sometimes it is a little bit around timing. It probably is a little bit also offset with the drop that we see afterwards in relation to COVID, when we weren't able to recycle for a certain period of time. But I might look into that a little bit more. I think there was also a change around that time. It might have been a little bit earlier, but probably when people were more used to it, when we made recycling free to drop off at the recovery parks, and that did result in an increase at that time. So that could be a flow-on effect from that.
Yeah, thank you. It'd be interesting to just see if there's a backstory to it.
Okay. Any further questions of Angie? No, thank you, Angie. No, it looks good. Waste to landfill is tracking pretty well as well. But I think you'll find that'll go down once the green bins come along.
Yeah, that's right. It will be really interesting to see how quickly that change happens and how significant it is to start with in terms of that percentage that we can divert from landfill. I mean, all up, we're looking to divert, I think, 320 odd tonnes a year of waste from landfill. So that's a good win for the district. And I mean, the other thing is that organic material is being processed into compost. And I was talking to the contractors yesterday, and the markets for that compost material are really stable. In fact, they're probably looking for more material. So that's, yeah, it's a really good outcome.
Yep. Thank you. No further questions? Thank you, Angie. Very good report. Thank you. 5.5, Engineering Manager's Report. Someone like to move that we adopt this report? Matt, thank you. Thanks, James, seconded. Joni.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to pull up the report on my screen so I can track it. So we've got some basic Three Waters operations information in there. Currently, I think our only actual concern in water is that we think there might be a leak in the Allendale scheme. We've spent some time and effort trying to track it down. We'll continue to work on that just to keep ourselves ship-shape there. Wastewater, stormwater doing well. We're showing data of water testing from beginning of the fiscal year through now. No surprises there, and the same with the service requests. We're keeping up with those. Then I've got the water use graphs for you from the different towns over last couple of years. And wastewater use graph, of course, parallels the water use. There's just an exception to note that in Twizel, our wastewater flow meter was down for a significant part of last year. And so that's why you'll see in 2021, we're reporting a low wastewater discharge volume, but that's actually the fact that we didn't have data for a number of months. Not showing up there.
Showing a trend.
We've got some projects coming up in the world of Three Waters. We've got a consultant working on our new Fairley water treatment plant. I think they're preparing a design build contract to let, and that should be coming out in the next month or two. And we're looking at a construction completion date in a few years' time, June 24. We're going to do everything to move that forward, but we understand there's a long lead time, a year and a half, to get a particular component of the treatment, the membranes that are needed in the water treatment plants. So we're not lagging on that. It's just difficulty obtaining some of the materials there. Desludging of the oxidation ponds, we've got them underway at all three towns. Fairley was the last one to start up, and it's going to last for about 2 months on that. And water main replacement, we've got our stage 4 coming through for Fairley shortly, and wrapping up in the other towns. In Techapol, we just started Techapol one. Twizel one is the one that's wrapping up, doing final restoration. Our Techapol wastewater treatment plant, we've had a consultant looking at the possibility of upgrading it and actually relocating it. And we have presented preliminary findings to the community board just so that they could get a feel of where we were headed with that. Actually, I lost track of what the next step on that one was. I think our consultants were going to finalize some of the costs associated with the different options. Dave, do you recall the next step on that wastewater treatment plant relocation?
Tim's online, he'll cover it in his report when he does it. So, and also I'll fill in for Pete when he's online. So, yeah, let's leave it till then.
So voting, we can switch to, well, I should pause here and say, are there Three Waters questions from the group? We've got Jeff online with us to answer anything in particular. Are we looking good? We'll just go on then to voting, okay?
just on your three waters with the meters extracted from each scheme, it's going to really bring in the water meter as an important measure to find out what's going on, isn't it? We need.
Again, that'll get covered when Tim does his report, Mr. Chairman. One thing we do want to raise, however, with the community is the letter that's come from Mr. Bloomfield regarding fluoridation. None of our schemes have got fluoride as far as there is, and we seem to be sitting in the middle of the pack with regard, and Joni might be able to give you a little bit more detail in regard to tooth decay in our communities. Now, you may or may not remember, but the government's changed the legislation. So the medical officer of health, or no, whatever Mr. Bloomfield's called, he's higher than that, he's general director of health or something. He can direct us to fluoridate it. If he did, it looked like it would be an expense for us in the order of maybe 150 to 200,000 per scheme to put it in. We haven't heard anything, but we just thought you should put it on your radar that he now has that power, and they certainly identified our 2 or 3 big schemes, Fairley, Techapol and Twizel, as not having fluoridation. So Joni or Jeff, I don't know whether you want to add anything more to that.
Thanks, Dave. It's well known that adding fluoride to drinking water reduces overall costs for our community in terms of dental expenses and then other medical expenses that can result from that. And we looked at we saw a really good report for New Zealand a few years back. Over a 20-year lifetime, it can produce remarkable savings to fluoridate the water. But the cost of installing it for small systems like ours, in some ways, you don't get to see those actual savings. So it's a program that's really focused towards larger water distribution systems. But as Dave pointed out, we might be mandated to implement it, and then we would implement it. But the break-even cost, according to this report from 2015 or 16, was around 500 residents as the point at which it's a break even over a 20-year life cycle, including medical costs. So, you know, I can't really recommend it strongly for small communities. Clearly, it's a good program for a large utility.
I'd like to add that there is also the cost of if our operator gets contaminated with fluoride, then he can't work on the system until he gets out of it. So it means you've got to get another operator in, and that'll be at a cost to us. We'd have to get an outside operator. So that's something that can happen, and it needs to be borne in mind.
So under 3 waters, should the government take it over, the implementation of fluoride will be at their cost. Previously, it's been asked before, there's been a bit of noise about it, but there's quite a big group of people in New Zealand that are quite adamant that fluoride is a poison and it can be added other ways, like a fluoride pill before you have a cup of tea, rather than polluting the water with another chemical. So we've at council level, rural, provincial, and at the Mayor's Forum, have discussed that and said, well, the government wants to feature it. It's a government issue. It's a government decision. It's a political decision to actually do this. So it's starting to get a bit confusing now that they're legislating for fluoride.
What they've done, they decided that it was too difficult to be made at a local level. That's why originally they were going to change the legislation to make the decision made by the DHB, but they decided that would be too political as well. And so they've actually centralised it to Dr. Bloomfield, who can make that decision. I think you remember, I'm just trying to think of her name, she was the Minister of Health and she was an ex-dental nurse, I think under the National Party. She actually brought in 100% subsidy for fluoridation. I don't know of any local government that picked it up. And as you say, Graham, there's quite a strong movement in the community of anti-fluoridation. you've got to recognise, I suppose, the biggest benefit for fluoridation is the low socio-economic group that actually don't participate in political discussion. And so the beneficiaries of fluoridation usually don't get a say around. You get people that can afford fluoride tablets, fluoride toothpaste and all the rest of it. But at this point in time, my reading of it is Dr. Bloomfield could say, yes, you install, and it could be at our cost, which seemed a bit really odd to me. He would have to give us a bit of a lead time. And like you say, I think the 3 entities or the 4 entities or whatever water reform would come in would click in prior to that. And I presume it would be the entities that would then have to pay for that installation if based on the legislation that's in there at the moment.
It is a bit scary that they can actually mandate it for us, and then it's at our cost. But as you rightly point out, it'll probably be when, when they do the reforms and when they do look at the larger entities.
Yeah, it's a bridge we'll have to cross. Any further questions on the waters? Move on to roading.
Yes, moving on to roading. Here, so I've got a graph in there showing how we've been working on the unsealed roads over time by year. A couple of roading projects. The school in Techapol is just tidying up now. I think the last few bits are happening for that project. The car park, then we've got the long vehicle car park in Twizel that had been on hold for a bit. What resources were being used elsewhere, and now they're back, I think, on site to finish that up. Ultra-fast broadband, we do get a number of service requests on this topic where contractors are coming in to put in the fiber network and are careless or perhaps not finishing off the reinstatement to our standards. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to work with them to get this work done. It's the lowest thing on their priority. There's only one hook that we have as council to issue a completion form, and it's not all that important to them, so it's not a great hook. So it does affect our citizens. They're concerned about these sites not being fully completed. So I think that's my next project to get on these fiber subcontractors and make sure they finish the work to our standards.
I just see on the grading side of it, we're probably slightly below average over the years. Is that going to be picked up for winter?
We've got Scott in on the call here, the roading manager. I think, I'm not sure, but I know part of those numbers I think are Scott's. You've come across a few approaches to reduce the frequency with which you have to grade the roads. And I'm wondering if that's what we're seeing on the chart. But Scott, would you be able to answer that?
To you, Mr. Chairman. Slow start to the contract. Obviously, contract changed end of October, start of November. At the moment, we've got 3 graders working the network, varying times. So yeah, we're picking up on that and we're starting to get on top of it now. And that should improve in the coming months. But yeah, it's just a timing thing. Bit of training as I've taken on new operators, as well as getting that new contract underway.
Okay. Any advancement on our bridges?
At the moment, we're still working through the bridges side of things. We've sent a letter about North Apua to ECAN, so I think we've got a response back on that, Joni. But yeah, it was just pushing back in relation to that, to obviously get that formalised and be able to get in and finish that work off around there. The Fords around top of Nixon's Road and possibly Jack Lovelock, we're having a look at. We've got that solution for them, and we're in discussions with ECAN to obviously get a consent to undertake those works, or look to undertake those works, and it will just be based on financial budget that we've got allocated, whether we can do both those, or how we schedule those.
Any further questions? And
Through you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Scott. 2 or 3 times through the papers, I noticed the comments, project slowed down due to scarcity of bitumen or difficulty to access bitumen. This is going to be an ongoing problem, isn't it? And I'm wondering how we're going to deal to this or protect ourselves from having projects slowed down because of access to bitumen.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, in response to that question, we've been talking with FH. They've got a solution called Last Planner. So it's about planning this stuff further in advance, effectively, so we know what timeframes, so we can actually get on top of that sooner rather than later. I've also talked to our co-funders, Waka Kotahi, given Marsden Point refinery shut down. We're now fully reliant on import bitumen in this country. And they made an agreement with a lot of the suppliers around wholesale bitumen, around the supply market, how they can procure it, what supply they're going to have, what interruptions that might come with. So yeah, I've asked for feedback on that and what that agreement stipulates to see if it's to effectively justify and support that that information that we're getting through, that it's limited, or if it's just due to supply chain issues with COVID holdups, etc., and the fuel price the way it is currently.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I might just add to that, Fulton Hogan were going to build a tank to actually have storage here in Canterbury. So I presume that's going ahead.
Correct, you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that's still going ahead. I think it's still in construction and that's not fully constructed yet. So that could be something to do with the issue. But yeah, as we said, we're following up with Waka Kotahi to see what those requirements were around that provisioning and storage of bitumen supply, especially for us, given we're a small council and given, yeah, there's a lot of sealing to be done.
So I definitely see that we need to be logged in. It needs to be programmed, otherwise we're not going to have this stuff.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I'd just quite like to add, I'd just like to make sure the committee's aware. We got a request early on Saturday that the DHB wanted to set up a testing station in Techapol. So they used our long vehicle car park or our bus car park there. I just wanted to recognise the work that the roading team put in to actually get a safety plan, a road safety management plan in place to do that. We had sort of, I don't know, 12 hours notice. I also recognise FH came to the party and did it. I don't know how many people they got through. I haven't actually got that data, but my understanding, at least we got the approvals through. We got everything done to the satisfaction that we felt the operation was safe. And I must admit, very, very little notification on that. So again, just recognition to FH and our roading team.
Yeah, I'd echo that, just to say thanks to Scott and Aaron for the work that they did together with FH. The other thing David and I spoke about was getting similar sites set up and ready to go in Fairley and in Twizel, because undoubtedly that's going to arise and we need to make sure that we're prepared in that eventuality. There are some costs associated with getting that all set up, and we're just busy looking into whether we can recover that from civil defence as well.
Very good. No, that was going to be my question. We set up the Twizel and Fairley, so that's good. Thank you. Any further questions on the road?
I just think we should endorse the compliments to the staff for achieving that from the councillors.
Okay.
I'll second that, and may I suggest that a note of thanks go to the roading team and to be forwarded to Fulton Hogan, please.
We could possibly get the mayor to
write a mayoral letter.
write a letter. Yeah. Very good. Well done.
Just give them an apple, Mr. Chairman.
Not ready
Not
yet,
the apple
David.
brothers.
Not a pineapple.
Just wait, David.
David just wants his apple pie.
Don't use a pineapple. Okay, we'll move on. 5.6, capital works program for 2020-2021. Someone like to move the adoption of that report, and thank you, Emily.
Mr. Chairman, Peter's got a separate appointment, so he's not online. So I'll present this report and answer any questions. I think if you have a look on page 48, it gives you a pretty good overview of it. Basically, the water mains, Twizel package 1, package 2, pretty much complete. We've got package 3 and package 4 at the market, and package 3, sorry, which is Techapol, is about to start, if it hasn't started already. We've just let the contract for the final one, which is for Feely, and that's gone to Rooney's. A very good price in there. You may or may not remember, we did ask council to delegate it, especially to the mayor and the chief executive, because we thought it was going to come in just over that 2 million. It came in at 1.4 million. So we were very pleased with the price of that work to finish off the Feely water mains. Basically, the treatment plant we've got there, as Joni has already said, it's in the design stage, sitting with Becker's. We're finalising the land purchase, and my understanding is that the landowner who owns it at the moment, we've got agreement on boundaries and access ways and all that. So that's just going through the motions of finalising that purchase. And the shared use path are pretty much all completed. So those are the big kind of overview projects. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. If I can't, I'll pass them on to Jeff and Joni and Scott.
Okay, any questions? I suppose the scary thing is the trying to get materials and resources.
Sorry, say that again. I didn't quite pick that up, Stuart.
Scary part is the lack of resources.
We've all got, we get reasonable number of tenders through there. We have had confirmation that the contractors have been able to respond appropriately in the timing, but as Scott said, there are some issues around things like sealing, that kind of issues, and that'll have to come through when we're doing the trench reinstatements, because a lot of it is in the road. We were trying to coordinate as much as we could with other works, but I do believe that we will get it finished on time. So touch wood, it hasn't affected us. And I think that the way the government's kind of relaxing the COVID rules, I don't believe that will affect us. There is a little bit of delays, and Tim might talk about that, particularly around the timing of some of our contracts under the stimulus package. But yeah, we're making, I think, good progress at this point in time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd just like Crown Infrastructure Partners are quite happy with our spend. Initially, they weren't happy with what we had in front of us. The timing's been pulled out from March to June, which kind of is going to help. But they were quite concerned that we weren't going to get all our money spent. You've been out of it, we can spend it.
And two things, I suppose, that's helped us there. We've had Anthony, can't remember, I should know, Anthony down here who's in charge of that program. So he came down for a site visit, I think in November. And then John Mackey, who was part of their team, he worked, filled in the gap until we appointed Joni. So they're reasonably aware of it. And to be fair to say, I am still having a little bit of debate about them around cash flow. I want them to give me more money than that they want to. They're saying I can make multiple applications. The more money I can get up front, the better. We've just given them a cash flow scenario. All basically big contracts are let. So yeah, we are confident that we will get all of the works done appropriately within the timeframes done. And in actual fact, if you have a look at it, the last, I think, June, we drop off to absolutely very little. Yeah, so touch wood, we are all on track. The biggest difficulty one will be around the water meters, which is a supply chain thing. But what we've done is we've transferred into the program some of the renewals, and we've transferred out of the program some of the we haven't transferred out of the program. We've transferred the way we're going to fund them. So that in actual fact, if for whatever reason we have problems with the supply chain around the water meters, basically we've still got the funding and we get the full 5.11 million from central government. And it was an approach recommended to us by Anthony Wilson, who was in charge of the whole program. So we've gone through that, and I've just actually got text this morning, Mr. Chairman, that they have approved that change in scope. So that's been fully approved by the Infrastructure Commission. So that's really good news.
Well, that's great. You've done well done, and very proud of what you've achieved, David. Thanks.
Yep. And I'd just like to commend that as well, because having had all the concerns through the audit process about the doability of all of this, I think that the process that was set in place of actually and the project management that went with this and the visibility of the reporting has really aided in us being able to demonstrate that we were able to deliver this on time. It was just a pity that we spent 2 or 3 weeks arguing with the auditors around this.
I think auditors, Angela, will owe us an apology if they do those sorts of things.
Yep, I just thought I'd mention that, because we spent about close on 3 weeks going backwards and forwards on this specific point, and I think the proof is in the pudding, and we're achieving everything. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Yep, thank you. Well done. No further, any further comments on the capital works program? Quite happy. All right, we'll move on. 5.7, the free water stimulus update. Someone move that we accept this report. James, thank you.
Well, it says I'm author. I'm going to hand over to Tim. He's really the author of this report, Mr. Chairman, but he just didn't have access to info council, so that it was under my name.
Once it got can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted. Thank you. I guess the key points are, as David's alluded to, the project substitution request we put in just prior to Christmas has been approved, which has meant that in terms of Mackenzie District Council funding, roughly 900 grand comes out of the water renewals funding program and comes back into this program as to enable the water meter project to proceed once the time span has been completed. Just going through the overview, I guess the key item is the water meters pilot, which was budgeted at 350k, and due to supply issues, we've currently ordered 125k worth of meters. With a bit of manipulating and transferring to other amounts, the final amount remaining in the water meters will be about 1 million, which will enable us to do all of Twizel and quite a few other areas as well. The supply chain issue, which has been alluded to, is an unusual one, and that we're struggling. Well, we're not struggling. We're waiting for the American manufacturer just to prove the technology required to enable the meters to communicate through the network and back to Twizel, back to the Mackenzie District Council servers, and to enable all that to work correctly. So it's more a technology issue there rather than a supply constraint, which is affecting other issues. They're confident that, well, they're doing proof of proving tests at the moment, and believe that the communication devices will be available after June this year. Going through the rest of it, I guess the key capital items which are underway is the desludging of the wastewater treatment plants. Twizel is now completed and they're underway in Techapol. There's been a few issues with that in terms of the amount of debris which they've encountered within the ponds themselves, blocking the equipment, but generally when they're able to work, they're making pretty good progress. The CCTV pipe inspections, they're actually ahead of program and should be finished in Techapol this month. The next key item coming up on the agenda is, well, the rising main from Mackenzie Park through to the Twizel wastewater treatment plant. That's contractors mobilising onto site at the beginning of March and is confident that that work will proceed fairly quickly. The next one on our agenda is to get the Burks Pass wastewater treatment plant upgrade all committed so that we can complete that by June. And I think that's probably the key items. I guess of interest on page 2 is the graph, the Mackenzie actual and forecast. Since this graph was produced, the June actuals have come through, and we actually spent in January 22. I don't know why I said June. About $2,000 more than the forecast amount. Those two big peaks, the two big bumps in the graph, represent when we transfer funds from this program through to the water services renewal program. I think everything else is fairly straightforward. Please don't answer any questions you might have.
Got any questions? Just hope it all goes nice and smoothly and we keep plugging along and get some of the stuff done.
Well, I think, you know, if it's quite impressive when you go to the Twizel wastewater treatment plant to see the big 5 bladders all full of dewatering solids. They've taken out roughly 470 dry tonnes of solids out of the treatment plant ponds, which is an impressive amount.
Mr. Chairman, was I a little bit of miss? I'm not sure. Have we introduced Tim to you all? He is our new project manager, taken over from Mike Davies from Opta. I'm not sure whether I have introduced him to the committee or not. Apologies for that.
No, I think that was done. Well, we did that. Did we do it at the council meeting? We have it. Tim has. We have seen Tim's face before.
Yep.
Thank you.
David, can I ask a question through the chair? This graph that's been produced, does finance have sight of this, and are we're obviously aware of the cash flow implications, and they're factoring that into the debt drawdowns? I know some of it's funded from Crown, but there'll be a portion of it that'll be funded internally.
No, it's all funded from the Crown. So, and that's the debate that we're having. We're saying we want them to forward 1.6 million to us at the moment to deal with the cash flow over the next 3 months. They're saying they're prepared to forward 600,000. I've got to make another application when I go to the next one, and I'm saying that's ridiculous. So it should be, and that's the terms of the agreement, that they will fund the whole project up front. So we get the grant, and before we do, I am waiting for a reply on that as we sit here. So hopefully I'm definitely getting 400,000 more, and I've still got 600,000 in the bank in advance, but I'm saying I'd like 1.6 million, not 400,000 forwarded to us at this point in time.
David, just so that I understand, with the 3 water reform program, that's obviously all DIA funded, but the stimulus projects, that's internally funded, isn't it?
Out of loan, that's correct. And what happened is, what we're doing is we are transferring some that was going to be loan funded into the program, and what they will fund that up front, which is that 900 that Tim, and then we'll use the loan capacity to finish off the water meters, which means that by the time we've finished both programs, just in case the supply chain runs over the end of that financial year, we do not lose any money. And like I say, I was approached, recommended by Anthony Wilson, who's in charge of the whole program. Apparently the rules are we weren't allowed to substitute anything out of the annual plan, but it was specifically the 2021 annual plan, but we could actually substitute things out of the 21-22 annual plan. So now that we've got an annual plan in LTP, we can do that. And then that just de-risks it for us.
So the graph that's actually on, that's shown, that's just all the DIA funded projects.
Correct.
Correct.
Just that was my point of clarification, sorry.
Okay, just under project substitution request, number 2. Project 9A, which is the developing of the wetlands, and especially interested in the Fairley one, and it's given that more time to coordinate with iwi and their nurseries. Well, we don't need any nurseries for the Fairley one. Just a bit more about what's going on there, but I thought we could progress that one.
Just a good simple one where you can see very clear what's going on.
Jeff, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, that one is, we'll have to get back in touch with Canterbury Wood Chips, because the person we were dealing with before there, he's since gone, and they've gone very cold in getting in touch with us again. And we probably do need to do a little bit of work in each of those basins this time, and make sure that we can get the flow to the very end, which is what we were struggling with the first two. So we learned a little bit from the first ones, but preliminary indications are showing that to the groundwater it does make a difference with the nitrates getting into the groundwater when they are growing during the spring to early autumn. When they are growing, first frost, they die off, and then that's it, gone for the year. But the initial results are looking very promising.
So you actually think that we could progress that?
I think so, but we'd have to do a bit more work, and there's a bit more cost than what we did last time, because we were struggling to get the effluent to the very end of some of those basins in the drier times. At the moment, when it's so wet, it's not such a big issue, but when it was really dry and when we first did those first two, we struggled to get the effluent to the end, and we lost quite a few plants. So we need to really look at the design of those basins and do some, maybe change how we feed the effluent into them. That's all.
Yeah. I'd probably note that the purpose of project substitution request number 2 was to safeguard the DIA funding, so that we didn't lose any of it. So there's a number of minor projects and projects which were at risk of not being completed by June were taken out. And it's probably fair to say that a lot of those projects will proceed at some stage, but they've just been taken out of the out of the stimulus package, just to safeguard that capital, and that capital has been transferred into the water meter trial, the water meter project, which is extremely important to Mackenzie District's future plans. Does that sort of answer that a bit?
Yep, thank you. Any further questions? Everybody quite happy? Okay, well, thank you very much for your attendance, and I'll call the Engineering and Service Committee meeting to a close. Thank you.